I'd just like to apologise on behalf of the No One Likes Us Talking team that there was no September monthly show, as it was a very hectic month for myself and the two panellists that we have on. This is October's monthly show and we'll be back for the next monthly show in November. Come on, you Lions.
Hi, Bethany Manxelo here. You have joined us for the magnificent monthly Millwall podcast, which features thoughts from the panel about what affects the beautiful game and Millwall. Enjoy!
Hello everyone and welcome to this season's second No One Likes Us Talking's monthly show. I'm your host Myles Thornton, and with me I have the No One Likes Us Talking team of Phil Coleman and Ted Robinson.
Not everybody likes them, but they don't care.
Evening Phil, evening Ted, how are we all?
Yeah, great, thanks. Evening Ted, evening Myles.
Evening Myles, evening Phil.
Okay, first of all we'll start off. Phil, any shocks so far for you this season? We'll talk about players later, but Phil, for now, any shocks so far this season?
In the league, I'd probably suggest I'm shocked that Middlesbrough have only won one game, and Coventry, both in the playoffs last year, until Coventry won it. I think they won it last night. Perhaps they've lost some players during the summer, perhaps injuries, but those two I would have thought would have been certainly in the top half. And Southampton, I would have thought they'd been up there along the sides of along the likes of Leicester and Leeds, and those with big budgets, probably Sunderland. And I'm nicely surprised, really, Preston, bit of a surprise. Not so Ipswich, just up the road from me, and averaging over 28,000, which is amazing. The shocks. It's early days, 38 games left, and but I would have thought Middlesbrough would have got off to a better start. I wouldn't write them off at all. And Southampton, not sure why they're struggling a little bit, but they're the little surprises early days.
Yeah, agree with you there, Phil. Ted, has anything surprised you?
Well, one shock I'll get over to Phil quickly. Coventry drew last night, mate. Huddersfield scored in the 95th minute.
God.
I turned it off by then. Sorry.
So did I. It was only I read a paper this morning and shook myself. But because it was Darren Moore's first game, and they equalised in the 95th minute. But I mean, there's lots of surprises in the Championship. There always is. I mean, on Saturday, sitting there watching the West Brom game, and up comes Plymouth 4, Norwich 0 in the first half. I mean, what a shock that was. After Ryan Lowe had said in the week that his team were a disaster when they was playing. And then Rotherham, who looked a poor side against us, whether it was us being that good, I don't know, they hold Preston, who have been flying. Shocks and surprises happen all the time in the Championship. But Phil's right, Middlesbrough, who I think would have been a lot of people's tip to have had another real go at it this year, and Southampton in particular, both surprised me, because you look at some of the quality in Southampton's side. I can't believe that they're going to keep going the way that they're going. It just doesn't don't make sense to me. But the usual suspects are up there, Leicester, and I for one agree with Phil. I'm not surprised about Ipswich. They had a lot of momentum coming into this season after the way that they performed last year, so I'm not surprised there, and I'm not surprised that Leeds is pushing up the table now neither, after seeing them the other week. But yeah, that to me is the Championship. Shocks and surprises week in, week out.
We'll take a break there, and for now let's listen to Stan Godwin and myself talking about local non-league side Bermondsey Town Football Club. Bermondsey Town, you heard of them?
I have, but what about then?
They're a football club based in Rotherhithe. They're currently members of the Kent Football League Premier Division and play at the St Paul's Sports Ground, Salt Road. They ground share with Fisher on match days. It's where the Millwall Lionesses, Romans and Pride play on Sundays.
Oh yeah, I know. Well, if Millwall are away, I'll get along.
Check out the fixtures and details on the Bermondsey Town website.
I will give it a go.
I'm your host Myles Thornton, and with me I have the No One Likes Us Talking team of Phil Coleman and Ted Robinson. Make sure to get down to Bermondsey Town FC if Millwall aren't playing or are away. Their next home game is the South London derby against Peckham Town FC on Tuesday, October the 10th, with a 7:45 kick-off at St Paul's Sports Ground. Turnstiles opening at 6:45. In the summer, Millwall signed Arsenal teenager Brooke Norton-Cuffy on loan from the Gunners for the season. News at Den was reporting saying the passion of Millwall's fan base also had a part to play in convincing the teenager that the Den was the right place for him this season. In an interview given to News at Den, Norton-Cuffy said, "The project that they have going on here last season and the season before that, they've really been pushing. I spoke to the coaching staff and they put up a diagram for me of my game and where they thought I could improve. And once I saw that, I said I can't really turn this down." He went on to say, "I feel like my development plans here have clear goals and things I have to do and achieve." He finished his interview by adding, "When I go on loan, I look at it as I want to win as many games as possible. Firstly, I want to help the team to achieve as much as possible, and then I have to look at my own development as I want to be the best player I can be." Phil, from your perspective as an ex-professional player and going out on loan in your career to, I believe, Wrexham, what do you think? What do you think about this approach?
I think it's a great approach. My time being loaned out to Wrexham is a story in itself. I was suspended, and a young apprentice kept me out of the game. He had a couple of good games while I was suspended, so I had a choice: play in the reserves until I won my place back, playing at places like Newmarket, or find a loan. So I went on loan to Wrexham for a month, and it ended up 5 months. Great experience, but you go straight into the first team, and there's expectations on you to be better or dominant or whatever it is, experience. But it's not easy fitting in. New training, new tactics, new teammates. You're staying away from home, and you're expected to make that immediate impact. But I learned a lot from that. And one of the things I did pick up, I was only 23, 24 years old when I went on loan. I'm helping out younger players who were in the team at the time. So you're either a better player or you're an experienced player. Loans, great for the club, no transfer fees. There's a deal on the wages, normally 50%. It can be that you pay nothing for a loanee. But what Millwall have done recently, they provided a great opportunity in a really tough league to allow players to come in, gain valuable experience. We've had all the centre backs, Ballard and Cresswell, and now Brooks come in, and they've all contributed to the team. It showcases their talent. It's far better for them playing than in the under-21s or even training with the first team and not getting a game. And I think Gary Rowett and his team deserve an awful lot of credit for identifying the likes of Brooke and Norton-Cuffy, and also playing them, fitting them into a good side, so that their talent ID have recognised that Ballard, Cresswell and Norton-Cuffy are good enough to play Mill's first team in a really tough, challenging championship standard of football. So a fair play. They did their homework on him. They fed back to him, and he's taken up the challenge. And I've only seen highlights of him, but he looks a very talented young player, and difficult to understand that he's playing in that level as a teenager.
Ted, as a fan, does that fit your expectations of the club?
Oh, I've got to be honest, Myles, I don't think if you'd have put a few heads together and say, look, we wanted to send out a message to the fans about yourself, how do you want to be, I don't think you could have done it any better. I mean, it starts out by saying about the passion of Millwall's fan base, which we all like to hear and we all know about and whatever. But then we go to the detail of it when he says the project they have been going on here last season and the season before that, they've really been pushing. I spoke to the coaching staff and they put up a diagram of my game and where they thought I could improve. So they've not only sort of sold him what they're trying to do at Millwall, but they've also sold him what they're trying to do for him as a player, getting him to be the best player that he can be, as he says himself. That's what he wanted. All the things that Norton-Cuffy has said there is what you want to hear from a young lad who's starting out and trying to prove himself to people. Now, this is a boy that's already proved himself, really, last year by getting to the playoff final with Coventry. But he wants to improve again. He wants to develop himself again. And I think, as Phil quite rightly just said, he's got bags and bags of potential. And I don't think we've seen the best of him by far at the moment. And he hasn't been bad. He's been pretty good. since we come here, but there were signs there on Saturday to me that he's really beginning to feel at home, and I think we're yet to see the best of Norton Cuffy, and I certainly believe that for this season we got one hell of a player on our hands, and for future seasons, if he stays at Arsenal, I think Arsenal will have a hell of a player on their hands, and he's got all the right attributes and he's got all the right attitude. I think, as I say, we're going to see a lot more of Norton Cuffy, and I believe he genuinely will get better and better.
I totally agree, Ted, because I know my first month, I literally drove up to Wrexham, 4 hours drive. I didn't know any of the teammates' names. I trained on Friday morning and I played with them on Saturday afternoon. But in my second month, everything was more fluent. I got to know the place. I got to know the business of what time we train, how we train, what we got to do. The third month I was flying. In my fourth month I just wanted to stay there because I was embedded in the team, knew everything, knew everybody. So I believe with his talent and his attitude, he will get better and better as he settles in and gels. So yeah, you're dead right. He will be a very good player by the look of it.
Well, that's a real point. I was saying to someone on Saturday, Phil, that when I look at this team, it's a new team. You've got Denore and Campbell in the middle of the park there, all of a sudden. Got Norton Cuffy out wide. You've got Longman on the other side of that. And listen, they're playing well enough as it is, but I'm sure, as you quite rightly said, as it goes on further and further, the more they play with one another, the better they get. Even Kevin Nisbet and Tom Bradshaw were beginning to actually link up a bit more in the game against Rotherham. So, I mean, it's a newish team, Millwall, and I think we just need to be a little bit patient because it's going to get better and better. And Norton Cuffy is certainly one that I expect to see even better performances coming out of him in the future.
Totally agree, Ted. And those players you mentioned, they are championship players. They are quality championship players. And as I say, coming down to South East London, gelling, settling in, playing as they have to with each other, getting used to it all. A bit of patience, and hopefully they will all come right. They will rise to the top.
We'll take a short break there and listen to our sponsor and great friend of the show, Dean Wilson. Hello, Dean. Myles here.
Hi, Myles.
Hi, mate. Your funeral directors are famed for caring for Millwall families. Where are you located, and how far afield have you travelled to accommodate the needs of families?
Well, we've got two branches. Our main one's in Eltham, in Wellhall Road, and we've got another one in Locks Bottom, which is near Orpington. Millwall fans all round us. We cover all areas, and we do travel for families. We had a lady very recently that passed away up north, but it was her wish to come back to South London for a funeral, so that's what we did. We went up to Sheffield and we brought her back. We quite often carry out funerals for Millwall families all over South London and Kent, right down to the South Coast.
Dean Wilson, independent family funeral directors, caring for Millwall families, no matter how near or far. Should you need them at any time, ring 0208 33 11 111. That's 0208 33 11 111. I'm your host, Myles Thornton, and with me I have the Nolan Access talking team of Ted Robinson and Phil Coleman. Thanks very much to Dean Wilson for sponsoring our monthly show. So then, people are still saying the injury to Sean Hutchinson brings the issue of defensive depth, and obviously Murray Wallace this morning on the day of recording, it's been found out that he's also injured now as well. He's set to be out for a few weeks, I believe it is. We'll start with Ted. It may prove to be one of a couple of mistakes in an otherwise brilliant transfer window, not bringing in another centre back. Will it or won't it?
Listen, the bottom line with something like this, Myles, is we're all better managers in hindsight, aren't we? I mean, when Gary Rowett turned around and said, "I've got 5 centre halves if you include Ryan Leonard," and bearing in mind he's had Wes Harding here for best part of a month now, and he hasn't had a game yet. There was strength in depth, but obviously injuries is something nobody can plan for. The only thing I'd say with Millwall, and it's a regular thing that they do, and I sort of forget why they do it, they always have a tight-knit squad of a certain number. They won't go splashing out on players that they think are going to be sitting around and not being involved for a whole season, because at the end of the day, unfortunately, it all comes back down to money. If we had a potless, not potless, if we had a pot that was full of money rather than a potless pot, if you know what I mean, there'd be loads of players here that we could just throw out on loan and let them go out here and there and whatever, a bit like your Chelseas do, your Man Cities do. We haven't got that. We can only go to the budget that we are given. And that's why I think he tries to get the balance throughout the side. And nobody's, I mean, the thing is, Peter, I was talking about defence. We've had the same sort of thing, unfortunately, happening up front. It looks like Tom Bradshaw might be out now. We don't know whether Kevin Nisbet's going to be fit again. They're our two main strikers. So, listen, sometimes in football, your luck's out. And at this moment in time, and we've been here before with Millwall, at the moment in time, we've got a few injuries and the luck is out. Yet people could turn around and say, listen, this has got to stop. There must be something wrong at training. And but as I can see it, most of these things are happening during matches. You know, Hutchinson was in the game. Murray Wallace took a knock during the game. Bradshaw's taken his knock during the game. Kevin Nisbet fell over his own feet and twisted his ankle. But it happens, unfortunately. And the thing is, what you have to do is dust yourself down, get on with it and deal with it. We've got a game coming up on Saturday. We've still got 3 centre-halves that we can pick. You may go with a back four because we've only got 3 centre-halves, but Gary Rowett will adjust himself accordingly with the squad that he's got. And it's easy to turn around and say, yeah, we should have got someone in and things like that. But at the time and at the start of the season, I tend to believe with Gary Rowett, and I still believe that we've got a better squad now than we had last season. And I think that's all you can expect, really.
Yeah, agreed. What about you, Phil? Anything to add or explain in more detail?
Yeah, totally agree with Ted. There is a better squad. That's a fact. The players that went and the players that have come in, they look infinitely better this year. And fair play to Gary Rowett. He's built that team almost summer on summer. He's got better players in. If you said to anybody before the first league game of the season, we have 6 centre-backs, including Ryan Leonard, including Alex Mitchell, who looks a good prospect, 2 right-backs and 2 left-backs, that is 10 defenders in the squad. And I say Leonard, they could play, Billy Mitchell could play probably right side, further forward. That is a good number. They are good numbers, and you're not overloading the budget with too many centre-backs. Don't forget, you've got to try and keep them all happy. Alex Mitchell's gone out on loan. Perhaps in the circumstances in his contract, can he be recalled? But a manager cannot, never, unless you're Man City, cover every eventuality given the budget and the squad size. As Ted said, the budget is not infinite, it's limited. And to say 6 centre-backs and 4 full-backs at the start of the season, you'd have bit your hand off for that. And there's good strength in depth there. There's experienced players there. There's some younger players there, and there's it also might be a good chance for players like on the bench, and some of the younger players might even get their chance as well. So injuries do actually provide chances for other players to come in. You cannot foresee injuries, but if they're all fit, there's great competition for places as well. As I say, it's a competition now with Brooke Norton-Cuffy coming in for Billy Mitchell. Those two are going to fight it out. When Brian's fit again, he'll be at the left-hand side fighting for his place. So it's good competition. It's just unfortunate, as Ted said, you get injuries. You cannot foresee who with, but you have to learn to deal with it. And I'm sure the loan market, if it's still available, might be an option. Recalling Alex Mitchell might be an option. Playing 2 centre-backs, playing people out of position, as Leonard has proven, more than adaptable. So there are options, even though there's a few injuries.
There's one thing I will say, Myles, regarding, obviously there's some people who've been talking about the goalkeeping situation because Sarki's got himself injured and whatever, and some people have even said, did he let George Long go? Well, the simple facts are, he let George Long go. I'll say he let him go. I think it was more of a case of George Long wanting to go, because there was a few people in this club, not in this club, but so-called fans of this club, that their treatment of George Long was absolutely disgusting. And the guy's probably thought to himself, enough's enough and I'm off. And in that case, we went out and bought a new goalkeeper. So it's not a matter of letting Long go when we could have kept him and bought Sarkic as well. The fact is, it was a straight swap, in a sense, from a goalkeeper that didn't want to be here to one that did. So, you know, some of these people that write these things and say these things about players, and then, you know, the next breath of turn around and say, why is he letting go? Well, sometimes these players, quite rightly, in my opinion, turn around and say, I've had enough of you, I don't need to take this, I'm off. You know, that people should really sort of think about that before they start complaining once they have gone, that they might have left themselves a bit short.
Again, agree, Ted. In this current day and age, Long would have spoken to his agent, and if he's not happy, and listen, I played and I knew where my fan club was, in inverted commas, I knew where they were abusing me. And if it gets to you, you speak to your agent and you say, what's available? In comes Norwich, probably doubled his wages, and he's gone. Fresh slate, goodbye, all the best. But I'll say this, in professional football clubs, every manager and every part of the scouting system, they target players for just that eventuality way earlier. They'd have had Sarkic lined up probably a year ago at least, just in case, and they'll have that for every position on the pitch. They will have a list of targets that they would go for if he goes, if he's sold, if he's injured for a year, and they've obviously had the guy lined up. The injury for Sarkic is unlucky, but what I will say, managers see players in training every single day, and they know if they're up to scratch, fit, capable, confident, and Gary Rowett looks like he's happy with Bart as an interim while Sarkic has gone injured and while Long's gone completely. So particularly Bart's experience, you know, the bloke's been around the goalkeeping in the penalty area long enough, and I would, as I say, Gary Rowett would be more than happy with him coming in until Sarkic is back from injury.
There's no doubt in my mind, Phil, that, you know, Bart's a good keeper. I mean, it's only a year or two ago people were saying, why on earth has Gary Rowett dropped him for George Long? You know, and I said at the time, well, it's opinions, and exactly what you just said. He sees George Long day in, day out on the training pitch, and for whatever reason, yes, George Long, we all thought, and because you could see it out on the pitch, that George Long, his kicking and his ability on the football with the ball at his feet was better than Bart's. But if you ask my opinion at the time when George Long came in, I thought Bart was a better shot stopper. So, you know, there's swings and roundabouts there. And again, people say one thing and then in the next breath, they're saying something else. Bart made a good save on Saturday. He was one of the ones that hit the bar. I think he would have tipped over if it was just below. He never let us down. He's a good, experienced goalkeeper. And maybe him being out for a best part of a season, perhaps he needs a few games to throw a little bit of rust off of him. But I've got no doubts that Bart won't let us down, that's for sure.
Ted, Bart has come in and he will need 3 or 4 games to get up to not match speed but match sharpness. The ball flying at you at 60 miles an hour, sometimes that doesn't happen in training, you know, unless you've got a horrible coach that he's actually firing them in at you horrible. So he needs that that match awareness and that match sharpness. He will pick that up because of his experience. Some fans, they created a hero out of John Jackson. Now, I played in front of Jacko and he was 38 years old, and he was diving around that penalty. But what he did, he absolutely bossed the back four. He bossed the whole team, to be honest with you. He got everybody marking. He told defenders where it was going to happen before it happened. And Bart will be doing that. Bart will have been there, seen it and done it, and he will be passing it on, telling everybody where to go, whereas younger goalkeepers, they sometimes don't have that dominance of the area. They don't have that experience of what's coming. You just have based on experience, you know, Jacko knew exactly where the fella was going to run. He knew where the shot was going to go. He knew where the fella was going to cross it. And I see a lot in Bart of that. That experience is absolute gold dust.
Yeah, the last 2 games we've had clean sheets, Phil. So that tells you something. You know, as you say, I'm sure Bart, with his experience, will let them know in front of him. Yeah. And I say, I for one don't think he'll let us down. It is unfortunate, Sarkic. I was looking at him as a keeper and he looked the part to me, and I thought he was just settling down again into the team and whatever, and it's unfortunate, but that's football, as they say, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, totally agree with both of you there. Now then, let's get on to the topic of Gary Rowett and his relationship recently with Millwall fans. This season he's started to get a lot of hate after the game, not even just after the game against Norwich, a couple of other games as well, I think, where we lost 3-1, bearing in mind we haven't actually won at Carrow Road since I believe the 60s. So I personally thought it was an overreaction from the fans. They were being really, really abusive with some of the things they were saying on social media, and they've been saying things like, "We are not going to get anywhere with Gary Rowett. Boring football and defensive tactics." Okay, then let me tell you some interesting facts about Rowett and his football, shall we? Gary Rowett kept us up in this league and the top end for 4 years against the odds. It was Gary Rowett who's in charge for the Middlesbrough game. It was Gary Rowett who signed most of those better players, and over 4 years, and fans think they were great signings. It was Gary Rowett who got us within one game of the playoffs. It was Gary Rowett who bloodied top youngsters. He didn't body them. Gary Rowett does change formation and tactics. Gary Rowett rotates the players to stop them burning out. Gary Rowett plays the low market very well. We've seen that with Brooknell and Cuffy, Ryan Longman as well, and Alan Campbell, and other players like Ballard. He's honest with his appraisals of performances. He's got a good win ratio, and average crowds have gone up under Gary Rowett with plenty of sellouts. But within many of our online supporter base want attractive football, winning every game and promotion, and against the likes of Leeds, Leicester, Norwich, West Brom, and all that money, wages and quality amongst them teams. Wow. Phil, what do you make of this situation?
I think what you've said there, Gary Rowett's achievements far outweigh any of the negatives. Some of it's blown out of all proportion. And I don't get it. Since when do fans ever boo a defeat? Since when is a defeat a catastrophe? I get every fan's got an opinion, but some of the negativity and the slagging off of the manager and some of the players are being made a scapegoat as soon as they have a couple of bad games. It doesn't do any good at all. No good whatsoever. And trust me, from first-hand experience, I had plenty of it in my time at the Den. It doesn't help. Pros get on with it. Fans will say, "I pay my money. If they don't put a shift in, that I'm entitled to boo them and slag them off." Yeah, you can, but it doesn't do any good. And by the way, I ain't forgot. I haven't forgot that, and nor's my brother. We both know exactly what sections of the crowd were slagging us off. Does no good at all. You're called a supporter for a reason. You support. No team is going to win every game. Teams are going to draw. They're going to lose. And also, I want to know what exactly is attractive football. Is it the tippy-tappy stuff we see in the Premier League? Is that what everybody wants? Is it Route 1 that Wimbledon produced in the 80s? Boot it up the fashion, knock everybody about and try and steamroll people? Is it all-out attack? Well, that's risky, particularly against the likes of Leeds, who've got 40 million parachute payments and players that are far better than any of ours. So I don't understand what attractive football is, because in professional football, you rarely get an easy game, particularly in the Championship. You might get a game where you're so on top and so dominating that you can play football how you want because you're 5-0 up and you're basically taking the pee out of the opposition. But that doesn't happen in the Championship. It doesn't happen in many professional football games. But attractive football, no. It's about winning points however you can. And sometimes it's ugly. Sometimes you'll beat Rotherham 3-0. Sometimes you'll nick a draw at West Brom. Sometimes you'll get beat when the last thing you're expecting. I remember Huddersfield last year, 1-0 at the Den. I think we had 90% possession and they had one breakaway and scored. But that's what Huddersfield did. They set up to mug us. I'd also say we need to take a big dose of realism. Here's the big tablet coming in. We got too close to the playoffs last year, and it's over expectations based on last season. As I say, there's no easy game in the Championship. A lot of teams are richer. They've got bigger budgets. They've got better players. They've got stronger, bigger squads. Some have just come out of the Premier League with that 40 million parachute to keep the likes of Jamie Vardy at Leicester in a league where everyone can beat everyone. So give credit to the opposition. They do their analysis. They send scouts. They try to stop us playing. They know our strengths. They stop the ball going into Fleming. They know where Bradshaw's going to run, and then they try to expose our weaknesses. So this is professional football, and you've got to try and find a way of winning points. And Gary Rowett's proven that. You know, we are in the Championship for several seasons, and we've been in the top half, and we've been 7th, we've been 8th. I'd say that is success. And if it's ugly, it's ugly, because the league below, you will not be getting 18,000 sellouts. No chance. So staying in this league has got to be the priority, whilst improving the squad, winning the games, drawing, losing, but staying in the league for me, and keep building. And certainly Gary Rowett has brought in better players in every single close season. He does change his tactics. He does look at ways to win. He has shored up to try and keep the points when he's been under pressure. Interestingly, here's one for you. We were 1-0 down to Leeds, and he put on some subs to try and get the game back. Unfortunately, we got done on the counter-attack. But if he'd have done nothing and we'd have lost 1-0, I'd suggest a few fans would have still slagged him off. So he's trying to be proactive, and it's wrong. If he does nothing, he's wrong. So the life of a manager, but he takes it. It's Waterford Ducks back to him. It's professional football, and I say it's still early in the season. I've got an old saying in football: it's a marathon, not a sprint. We've only got 38 games left. Seems like we've been going forever. But to those of you that want the young players on the pitch every week as well, this league in particular is so tough. I keep saying it's the best level 2 in the whole world, and it can destroy young players. They might have ability, they might have pace, but do they understand the toughness of the league? The teams they're playing. So what you do is what Gary Rowett's doing. He brings them onto the bench. He gives them the last 10 minutes. He gives them 20 minutes. He gives them a half. He pulls them out completely. He's developing them slowly so they stay confident. They're not going to struggle with things like defending, covering, and knowledge of the game. But trust me, too many kids in one team, and you get relegated, as I found out when I was 18, 19 years old. So personally, I think Gary Rowett's doing a good, solid job. He's kept us in the league. He's built a stronger squad, and he gets results. And if that's unattractive, then I'll settle for it all day, because you could play attractive football and get beat and get relegated, and you won't be getting half of the teams coming down there. Leeds United will be replaced by some of the teams in Division 1. So, I don't understand what attractive football is, but we need to find ways of winning points. And at the moment, I think Gary Rowett does that quite well.
Definitely. Ted, I know you are not keen on reading social media comments, but Flynn Fraser summed up the thoughts of many. He said, "I support Gary Rowett. I think he's the right manager long term, and I think the toxic criticism, worse than Holloway or Lomas ever got, towards him is completely unwarranted. I think most of us can't be bothered with the barrage of abuse anyone gets from vicarious group of so-called supporters."
Vociferous.
That's it, there we go. Well, Ted, what do you make of that, mate?
Well, yeah, I mean, Phil mentioned it in where he was saying, you're here to support the club, and what I don't like, everybody's entitled to their opinion when it comes to football, because if everybody had the same opinions of football, it wouldn't be the wonderful game that we all love, i.e. the way that we play, like Phil was pointing out. Wimbledon got themselves to the top tier of football by playing a certain brand of football, and there's nobody on earth that can turn around and say that wasn't a great style of football, because it worked for Wimbledon. So it's not all about one way of playing and all that sort of stuff. There's lots of different ways, but what I can't accept, certainly from our own fan base, is this extremist views or opinions either way. In other words, we lose one game, it's sack the manager, without looking at the game, and he's rubbish and all this old stuff that goes on. And that, I was at Norwich and I thought it was disgusting what they was chanting. It wasn't the sort of thing I want ever to hear being shouted at my manager, and even Holloway in that. And no one was more angry with Holloway than me. But at the end of the day, it didn't deserve that sort of amount of abuse that was being shouted across the pitch at Gary Rowett. To a man, if you look at his record against Holloway's or Lomas's, let's be fair. If you look at them records, Gary Rowett should be a god, because he's been far better for us than either of them. So that's what I don't like, is the extremist views. I don't ever get too carried away when we beat Rotherham 3-0, but it was a good performance, you can see that. But in the same breath, I'm not going to turn on my own manager with the sort of things that people were saying at Norwich. Listen, everyone's entitled to their opinion. I said after the Norwich game we didn't play well. I thought he made some mistakes in his lineup. I say he made mistakes. It's not the sort of lineup that I would have started at Norwich. That's my personal opinion. And, you know, we can all have them opinions when it all goes wrong. But in the same breath, if Millwall had gone to Norwich and won, then you should be giving Gary Rowett the praise that he would deserve. But if you're talking about, I say Gary Rowett overall, all the things that you just listed down were true about Gary Rowett. And some Millwall fans, that actually rubs them up the wrong way when you start telling them the things that I see and I believe is a success. One, he's kept us in this division for, the 4 seasons as it's gone. He's had us in the right end of the table. We haven't been battling relegation. Even now, when people, and Phil's right, it's a marathon, but have a look at it, lads. We're 2 points off the playoffs. We're nearer to the playoffs than we are to the relegation zone. And we're supposed to have been, according to some of these people, pretty crap and negative since the start of the season. Well, give me crap and negative for the rest of the season, because if we're only 2 points off the playoff with 3 games to go, I'll be a happy bunny. You know, you've got to be, again, like I think Phil mentioned, a realist about things. Don't get carried away emotionally with one result. If you lose, don't all of a sudden believe everything is wrong. Because it is funny how, to me, a lot of people get blinkered by the final score. In other words, what I mean, if we won a game 1-0, but we ain't been very good, the people, because we won 1-0, we was the greatest thing since sliced bread. Look at it properly. Have reasonable opinions about it and look at it through clear eyes. Don't get emotional about it and start saying, yeah, we've won 1-0, we're going to win the league, or we've lost 3-0 and we're going down. Because that's not football. It's a long way to go. Gary Rowett is a very good manager. He's proved that by keeping us where we are in the division. And I know I've heard Phil say this, the starting point at the start of the season is staying in the league. And there ain't no doubt in my mind that this team will stay in the Championship for next season. Because I think we are good enough and better than last year, although I think it's a stronger division this year. But I think we're still good enough to be knocking on the door for the playoffs at the end of the season. So, hang fire with some of that criticism and just see where we go.
Ted, I've got another saying: until you've walked in someone's shoes, go to the training ground and become Gary Rowett for a couple of weeks, and then deal with the goalkeeper injury, deal with Hutchinson's injury, deal with your best left back for a long time, Brian coming injured. And there's 1 or 2 others injured as well, and you've got to try and bring these kids through, and you've got new players coming in like Denori. Do I play him, Billy Mitchell or Saville? Where do I got to get rid of Vogelsammer? I'm bringing in new players, and all of a sudden you suddenly realise it's not an easy job. It is not an easy job to pick a team, and then you're getting all the information from your analysts and scouts that have been watching the opposition, and you're thinking, well, there's their strengths, we've got to nullify that, and these are our strengths, so we've got to try and play to this. And then at half time, the opposition have suddenly nullified your strengths. They've stopped Watmore's pace, but they're marking the 2 strikers out of the game. Until you've been in someone's shoes, don't criticise them. Have an opinion, great, but don't criticise the bloke. He doesn't go out there to lose a game. He goes out there to win points. He goes out there to put the best team available to him on the pitch and find a way of getting a point or 3. And it's a difficult job. And it's even worse in the Championship because it is so tough. And you touched on it. There's half the teams have been in the Premier League and they've probably still got 2 or 3 years of parachute money to retain great players. So it's been a tough start because he's brought new players in. They're still getting used to South East London. They're still getting used to the training methods. They're still getting used to each other. And then all of a sudden you get a load of injuries as well. And it'll be interesting to see what Gary Rowett does. But all things considered, he's done a positive job the last few years, and he's definitely improved the standard of the squad.
Yeah, and he's good for having players like Ryan Leonard, who, let's face it, started out as a midfield player. He could fill in as a right back, and now I think he's found what is probably his best position. Because he's a centre back that thinks like a midfield player. You know, he's not afraid to run forward. We've also got now we've got Ryan Longman, where I noticed although he's been playing as a left wing back for us in these games, but they were talking about he could play anywhere up front. So who knows that we might see Ryan Longman playing up front on Saturday, as we've got Joe Bryant ready and fit again. And he looks to me like the sort of player that could play anywhere. And that's the beauty with what Rowett does with a squad that he gets together. There's never really too many positions that he can't fill with the players that he's got. You know what I mean? They don't really have to play players out of position, or there's players that can play in various positions. And, when you look at that, it's describing everything you're saying there, Phil, where Gary Rowett goes to the training ground on a Monday morning, Tuesday morning, looks at the injury list and the ones that may not be available to him, and then he has to plot that through for the Saturday that's coming. It may not be the best 11 he can put out there within the squad, but he'll get an 11 out there. And this is the thing that I will say with Gary Rowett, and it's credit to him, is that we have always been competitive in this league, always been competitive in this division. There's only one or two games where I can remember us really getting beaten. Norwich being one this year. I think it was Coventry the other year where we really didn't turn up. But that's 2 games in 4 seasons that I can remember. I'll take that for the next 4 seasons, believe me, because in this division, which is one of the toughest, if not the toughest to get out of, without a doubt, in the world. But so yeah, I wish people would just sit back and think a little bit about Gary Rowett and all these business about negative football and whatever. Like Phil quite rightly said, what is attractive football? I'll tell you what's attractive football. It's winning football. When you win football matches, that's what makes people walk home with a smile on their face. And Gary Rowett hasn't been too bad at doing that.
Yeah, it's professional football, Ted, Myles. It's about winning games. You can be the greatest attacking team and you're bottom of the league. So there is a balance. And something else I'd say as well, the standard of football demands that there is a bit of quality in the team. I saw Watmore skin the full-back and pull it back. I also saw Fleming take a touch. These players have quality. Fleming is not going to run around like Terry Urlock, making tackles and killing people and trying to win headers, but give him the ball on the edge of the box and something will come off of the bloke. Now, sometimes 9 or 10 others have to carry Fleming for his bit of quality that's going to win your game, or a free kick, or a decent cross, or he lobs the keeper. But don't expect quality players to be like this traditional Millwall player running around headbutting people. Those days are gone. You work hard, you close down, you win your challenges, you defend like hell, but you have to have a little bit of quality in the side. Is it Nesbitt? Is it Fleming? Yeah, probably, because they will finish for you. In a very difficult league where you're playing against ex-Premier League defenders, you cannot have bog standard players up front, or that is the toughest part of football, creating and scoring goals. And in Nesbitt and Fleming, you might have them. But you have to understand the game has changed and some of the players are quality, but they are not going to be running and chasing full-back to full-back like a Kevin Bremner or a Terry Urlock, as I say. So the game has changed, and with that, the understanding of a player's role has to come into it for fans as well.
100%. We'll take a short break there and listen to Bethany Manctalo and Eamon Barkley talking about Clean Feed.
Bethany Manctalo here, Clean Feed by Ted Robinson.
Hold up, we're talking about an online recording platform.
Okay, our Ted Robinson sponsors our online Clean Feed recording platform.
What were you thinking of?
Well, it sounded like a Parfum D'Homme Intense.
Really?
Behave. Just go online and see who else uses Clean Feed. It's a great bit of kit at a great price.
I'm your host, Myles Thornton, and with me I have the NOLUT talking team for the monthly show team of Ted Robinson and Phil Coleman. Ted, I love that ad. So do you, don't you?
I don't know whether it's the hairs on the back of my neck have gone up or whether I'm just cringing. I can't quite work it out at the moment. Myles, but I think I'll have to have a little word with the script writer though.
We have seen our team display varied performances, which has led us into the top half of the Championship table. briefly, who at this early stage of the season has impressed you the most? Ted, what do you think?
Well, I think you have to say Leeds were impressive down there on the other Sunday. They have got quality, you know. They've got a guy that's going to put the ball in the back of net most weekends, I think, in Peru. Yeah, I think they've got enough about them to certainly be in the top 6, if not challenging the top 2. Leicester have obviously got quality all over them. I've been impressed with Ipswich. As I say, they have momentum when they come up, and you know, they may take a little bit of knocking back somewhere along the line to stop them from being up there. So yeah, I think them 3 teams have impressed me so far this season. But listen, there's not much between the majority of teams. I get a little bit miffed, like I was at the weekend when West Brom didn't start with Jed Wallace and Swift. I mean, 2 of their best players. I was absolutely over the moon when I see they was left out. And plus, they didn't impress me at all, West Brom, really. So there are a few sides that are a little bit disappointing at the moment, but in Southampton being another one, and Norwich, I don't know how or why they've dropped off the way that they did, because they looked pretty impressive when we played them. So, but I would say the impressive side at the moment for me, probably because they've come up, is Ipswich.
Yeah, definitely. Phil, how about you?
Yeah, definitely Ipswich. As Ted said, they've got the momentum. They've got a damn good manager, and he's played the market well. He's bringing players in from Man United, and averaging 28,800 crowds. That allows him to go and get players in the next window, and good income to pay those better players. How long will they last? It's a tough league. It's a long game. Impressed with Leeds. I thought their defence was very good, and obviously they've got pace on the counter attack. Leicester, seen them on the TV a few times, and they just look so good. They look like they could take anybody apart at any time. Whether they're going to be that consistent, I don't know. The surprise is Watford. I'm not sure where they're going. I'm not sure what they're doing. They seem to have the players on paper, but you don't play football on paper, so they're struggling. And something you said, who's impressed you the most? I took that, Myles, as our players. So I'll just move on to our player. I think Ryan Leonard, Millwall Football Club, is a better team with him in the team. I like the look of Denori. Brian looked good early on. We mentioned Young Brook earlier in the show, and I think Gary Rowett might be playing the long game, and he keeps these players fresh. So I'll expect the impacts coming from the likes of Saville and Billy Mitchell as the season goes on. So impressed with Leonard and those players I mentioned. Impressed with Leicester and Ipswich, but consistency, you know, constantly winning and picking up points. Not sure if Ipswich can withstand that, but I think Leicester certainly can with their backing.
Just to back Phil up there, Myles, I've been really impressed with Ryan Longman. Really impressed with him. I'm not sure why it didn't work for him at Hull, or why Hull wanted to let him go. But here's a guy that can go on his right side. We see with the finish against Rotherham, he can go on the left side and put a crossover. What I like about him is when he does get the chance, he's very direct. He's not afraid. What we was talking about earlier, where these sort of killer passes or putting dangerous balls into the box, it seems to be what Ryan Longman's game's all about. So I've been very impressed with Ryan Longman, and you know, and I'm still impressed with the 2 young lads, Imaku and Esse. They've not been in the picture so much the last week or 2. Perhaps they might appear a bit more on Saturday, but listen, we have got 2 real gems there, I think, in them 2 within time. I think this time next season they could well be the stars of our show, but at the moment, yeah, let's keep them, you know, coming on in bit parts at the moment, like Phil was saying earlier, because you can ruin them getting them out there too quick. But I just think there's such quality in the 2 of them that we've really unearthed 2 real gems here.
I'll chuck one in as well, and I'll just keep an eye on them, because football's about connections. And my son played for Torquay United a few years back now, and in his early few days he played beside Liam Rossini, and his dad Leroy Rossini was the manager and coach. Interesting to see that Liam Rossini has taken Hull up the league. and he must have something about him, and he's got a way of coaching, because Hull City seemed to struggle last year, but they seem to be doing quite well. So I'll just keep a watchful eye on Hull, because as I say, Rossini is highly regarded as a coach, and it's early days. There's only been 8 games, but Hull seem to be in a better position all round than last season.
Without stating the obvious, Phil, it's consistency, isn't it?
Yeah.
Hull look a good side, they do. Plymouth, one game they was good and one game they weren't so good. And that's the beauty with the Championship, that we all know everyone can beat one another. But it's that side that can get that consistency going, that's going to be there at the end.
I wouldn't rule out Middlesbrough. They can have 3 wins on the spin quite easily. They've got a great manager. They've got the financial backing as well. They get big crowds if they're doing well. So I would not rule out Middlesbrough in any way, shape or form either.
Well, look where the Leeds are now, Phil. Until they played us, they was down in the bottom 6, I think it was, and now they're in the top 6, and they've only had a run of 3 games. It's so early in the season that you go on a little run of good results with 2, 3, 4 games, and you'll find yourself at the right end of the table. So,
yeah.
As you say, if Middlesbrough all of a sudden click, which I see no reason why they shouldn't, because they've still got a few really good players in there, or pretty decent side once it goes together. I don't know what's gone wrong to start with, but as you say, quite rightly, keep an eye on them, because they could all of a sudden start climbing that table.
Yep.
Take a break there and listen to Dean Wilson once again. Thanks to them for sponsoring the show.
Hello, Dean, Myles here.
Hi, Myles.
Oh, mate. Your funeral directors are famed for caring for Millwall families. Where are you located, and how far afield have you travelled to accommodate the needs of families?
Well, we've got 2 branches. Our main one's in Eltham, in Wellhall Road, and we've got another one in Locks Bottom, which is near Orpington. Millwall fans all round us. We cover all areas, and we do travel for families. We had a lady very recently that passed away up north, but it was her wish to come back to South London for a funeral, so that's what we did. We went up to Sheffield and we brought her back. We quite often carry out funerals for Millwall families all over South London and Kent, right down to the South Coast.
Dean Wilson, independent family funeral directors, caring for Millwall families, no matter how near or far. Should you need them at any time, ring 0208 33 11 111. That's 0208 33 11 111.
I'm your host, Myles Thornton, and with me are the NOLUT Talking monthly show team of Ted Robinson and Phil Coleman. So then, we're coming towards the end of our second monthly show of the season, but let's talk about rising prices in football, and many thanks to Stan Godwin for giving me this bit of information to add to the show. Premier League clubs, season ticket greed risks pricing fans out for good, or does it? Will the Championship follow at a lower cost to fans, but just as challenging for many? 17 out of the 20 Premier League clubs have increased their season ticket prices for the 2023-24 season, with Nottingham Forest rising by 20% and Fulham's by 18%. The most expensive standard Premier League season ticket now costs at more than £1,000 at a quarter of the clubs, with the division's most expensive in the Riverside stand at Craven Cottage at an eye-watering £3,000. Ted, can you see this happening in the Championship at a lower level of expense, but way beyond what is asked for now?
Well, I certainly hope not, for all sorts of reasons, Myles. We all know where the money lies and where the money is, and that's within the Premier League. But I think we're getting to a stage now, if I'm honest, that I think it's about time that football clubs in general started putting, and this sounds a real strange thing to say in lots of ways, but I think the balance has to be readdressed. Start putting fans a little bit before some of the players, in the sense of the money that goes into players' pockets these days is phenomenal, absolutely unbelievable. But you can't, in this day and age, expect your run and a mill fan to pay for that privilege of having that player. What I'm talking about, if you go to Chelsea, you spend 100 million, or Arsenal 100 million on one player. If you look at it in years gone by, the exceptional players that there was mainly was paid out of the money that come from the gate. Well, now it's nigh impossible to match that. So what I'm saying is, someone somewhere in football needs to say, look, as wonderful as our game is, it will be nowhere without the fans. Because if you play in empty stadiums like we did in the COVID period in time, we all know how flat the football felt and looked, and you could see it in players a lot of the times that, you know, you've got to have fans in stadiums to get the atmosphere for what football is really about. And it's a problem that's slowly creeping in more and more. I actually, funny enough, I've got a friend of mine who is a Fulham fan and went to go and change his season ticket out of Johnny Haynes' stand into the Riverside stand this year. He said, I love to look at the stand. I've always wanted to be that side of it. I thought, new one, I'll go over there. As soon as he see the price of that, there was no way that he was sitting there. And he said to me, if that was the price all around the stadium, I wouldn't be going. And that's someone that's been going to Fulham for 50 odd years. You know, you have to understand that the fan base is your core of the game. Not only anything else, it's about the game. It comes from within the fans. Every fan standing on that terracing or sitting in their seat and whatever want to be out on that pitch, but they don't want to be skint for the rest of their life by just walking through a turnstile at a football match. And we all know things go up. We all know that there's expense in everything and that. But when you see rises of 20%, as hopefully Stan's figures are right, and 18% in a year when we're having a cost of living crisis, it's nothing short of scandalous, really. But I mean, I'm no accountant and that, but I would imagine the wages and that of footballers in this day and age, and I'm all for that. They're the people we go to see. I'm all for them, you know, getting what they deserve to a certain extent. But I believe it's beginning to go beyond that now. And whether that means that there should be a wage cap coming on the Premier League, I don't know. I know they've had it in other sports like the American football, which is where they get even more sort of money, if you know what I mean. But I don't know. But I think someone somewhere really has to look and see it from the fans' perspective. I mean, there have been moves where they're getting more fans involved on boardroom level, which is, in my opinion, perhaps the only way you can get your point across. Because the only other way, and as much as I hate saying it, that is you don't go. But listen, hopefully, you know, common sense will prevail and people will start thinking about fans. Because if I'm right in saying, because someone was telling me this about, you know, if you go to a football match in Germany, where some of the football's brilliant, like, you know, perhaps not quite the Premiership, but there's enough good games of football you can watch there. It's nowhere near as expensive, which beggars to ask the question, why is it so expensive in the Premier League? You know, it's a debate that has to be had. It's a worrying sign with the way that prices are going up. The question being about the Championship, will the Championship be like that? It probably will to a certain extent, but I don't think all the while you've got the likes of Millwall, Rotherham and them sort of people in there. They'll always be fighting a corner where price tickets are, the price of tickets is concerned. There'll be people concerned that you know, they can't afford it. So hopefully it doesn't go like the Premier League has gone. By the way, that £3,000 for that season ticket is nothing compared to some of the corporate stuff that goes on at Tottenham and places like that, Tottenham and Arsenal.
Yeah.
You know, they pay 4 times as much as that for corporate seats in Tottenham and that.
Yeah, definitely. Phil, what else may come to the fore both here in England and also abroad by these actions?
Yeah, I think it's a balance between clubs generating income and affordability for the fans, particularly in this current climate, as Ted mentioned. There is a limit. But when I see Man United, Arsenal, Tottenham, they're pretty much sold out. I know Arsenal got a members waiting list for season tickets. You know, that's got to be £1,000, £1,200, £1,500 per season ticket. that limit hasn't been reached, certainly for some clubs. In our league, the Championship has a lot of attractive games, particularly down at the Den. Millwall Leeds, Millwall Leicester, Millwall Southampton. These are really attractive. We've already had sellout crowds at the end of last season. We've had a sellout crowd already at the Bristol game and the Leeds game. So perhaps the pricing at Millwall is about right. I was heartened because I saw a midweek game, 12,000. I wasn't expecting that, but 12,000 for a midweek game seems to be a good turnout. It's also about the whole match day experience as well, and if that's good, the fans come back. Obviously winning helps, but you leave home early in the morning and you want a drink, you want something to eat, you pay for your ticket, you've got a good seat, there's a good atmosphere, so the whole package just generates coming back again. But I think overall in football, the crowds look quite healthy. We're averaging 14,000, I think, did I see, which is well up on previous seasons in this league. But there's other things that I've just suddenly remembered. Bradford. I looked at this at the start of the season. Bradford season tickets are about 190 quid, which works out, I don't know, about £8.50 a game. And they have over 15,000 season tickets bought for this season. You know, £8.50 per game. So Bradford can do that. It's like the pound shop mentality. You charge low and you get more. Also, I would like to see, because 12,000 versus 18,000 for our games, perhaps could they reduce the evening game prices? Because it's not easy to get there, and kids are at school and homework and they're training. So is there an attraction of making evening games cheaper? I don't know whether that's easy or not. I've also heard of kids go free or quid a kid. I'm not sure what they do abroad, but certainly they must be paying Harry Kane a fair few, but they don't charge half as what we do over here. But perhaps that's the different standards of living. But certainly I'll be looking at anything that increases footfall through the turnstiles. That's got to be the aim, because the more you get through, I mentioned Ipswich Town at 28,000. You know, Sunderland are full up, they're going to get 40,000 plus. So anything that increases footfall through the turnstiles, be it commercial, anything, has got to be a good thing. But at this moment in time, I don't think we've reached the limit on people spending, particularly when you see these packed out stadiums.
Definitely. We'll take a break there and listen to Harvey Brown talking about the Lions Food Hub.
Hi, Harvey Brown here. I am proud of the Lions Food Hub, which is jointly owned by Kelly and Ellen Webster, and they have been supporting families within our community for over 2 years on Millwall match days. If you would like to donate to them, they have a match day donation hub by the SE16 bar at Coleman Lane, end of the ground, where they accept any food or money and toiletry donations. If you can help, any donations will be received with thanks.
I'm your host, Myles Thornton, and with me I have the No One Likes Us talking team of Phil Coleman and Ted Robinson. Don't forget, you can donate to the Lions Food Hub at the Lions Food Hub Donation Hub, just across from the SC16 bar, and that can be at our next home game against Blackburn Rovers in a couple of weeks' time, on the 24th of October, or any home game. We've now reached the end of our second monthly show of the season. We really hope you've enjoyed it, and if you was one of those fans wanting Gary Rowett out, we hope we've been able to sway your thoughts on him, and you'll back him and the team from here on in. Thank you, Phil, for coming on.
No problem, loved it.
Thank you for coming on, Ted.
Cheers, Myles. Thank you very much. Really enjoyed that.
And thank you very much to those listening on our second monthly show of the season, sponsored by Dean Wilson's Family Funeral Directors. Our next show will be the Our Millwall Fan Show, hosted by George Lampy, with a panel of Jeff Burnage, Debbie Julians and Ted Robinson. Wow, you're popular, mate. Come on, you Lions.
Not bad.